the imagery of Christmas is dominated by males. That includes Santa Claus, Father Christmas, the Little Drummer Boy, Frosty the Snowman, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and Douglas the Talking Fir. Where are the women? Once upon a time, women were an essential part of Christmas imagery. They are found in nativity scenes, that is, scenes of Christ's birth, created between the 4th and 15th centuries. The art of the Christian Church, created between the 4th and 15th centuries, in Western Europe, is called medieval. Christian art created between the 4th and 15th centuries in the Eastern Mediterranean world is called Byzantine. A stone relief made in France in the 4th century is a good example of what a very early nativity looked like. The Christ child, carved on a scale bigger than everyone else, dominates the center of the composition. He's swaddled and lies in a wicker basket. A donkey and an ox stand behind him. Mary, Christ's mother, sits on the left. She wears a veil and raises her hand to her chin, tugging at her veil as if to cover her face. This is a traditional way of depicting a good and modest woman. A shepherd stands on the right. He holds his shepherd's crook in one hand. He raises his other hand, palm facing forward, in a gesture of prayer. The Nativity expands in the 5th and 6th centuries, making room for more figures such as Joseph, angels, and midwives. Midwives are mentioned as witnesses to Christ's birth in the Gospel of James, an apocryphal gospel probably written around the year 100. A nativity appears in the lower panel of an ivory relief made in the 6th century in the Eastern Mediterranean world. On the far left, Mary reclines on a cushioned bed with her hand to her veil. She looks to the right, where the swaddled infant lies. An ox and donkey flank the child. A midwife below Christ is in the act of kneeling. She raises her hand to touch him. She might represent two midwives. The Gospel of James tells us that the first midwife turns up when Joseph goes looking for help for Mary. This midwife becomes the first witness to Christ's birth, arriving before the shepherds or the Magi. So she can be shown kneeling and touching the child in adoration. On her way home, she meets a second midwife and tells her that Mary is still a virgin after giving birth. The second midwife does not believe her and examines Mary. When she does, her hand withers. When she touches Christ, her hand heals. So the kneeling midwife in this panel can also be the second midwife. She raises her hand toward Christ so he can heal it. A similar event unfolds in one of the many ivory reliefs decorating the so-called throne of Maximian, found in Ravenna in Italy. It too dates to the 6th century. A midwife holding her withered hand approaches Mary, who reclines in an ornate bed. Above, the bearded Joseph points to the Christ child. An ox and a donkey stand nearby. There are 3 reasons why the midwives are significant at this time. 1, they are witnesses to a profound event. 2, they are proof of Mary's virginity. And 3, they suggest that Mary is like a human mother in needing some help when giving birth. In that vein, a midwife plumps Mary's pillow on a page in a sacramentary written and illustrated in England in about the year 1000. In a mosaic made around the same time in Greece, Mary and the Christ child take center stage. This nativity belongs to the Byzantine monastic church of Osios Lucas in Phocis. The other figures here, starting at the bottom left and moving clockwise, Joseph, 3 magi, and 3 angels. On the right, 2 more angels, 4 shepherds, goats and sheep, and 2 midwives. One midwife pours water from a pitcher into a circular bath. The other holds the Christ child who sits in the water. She is also supposed to be testing the temperature of the water. Just before this mosaic was made, a Byzantine hymnographer, Simeon Metaphrastes, linked Christ's birth with his death. So in this mosaic, Christ's swaddling sheets recall his burial sheets. The cave where Christ is born becomes his burial place, and the midwives washing the child are like the mourners who wash the dead Christ's body. So now the midwives are also a significant reminder of Christ's death. In late 13th century Italy, the Dominican author of the Golden Legend reinforced the idea that there were two midwives. He said they provided proof of Mary's virginity. The domestic side of the Nativity gets a boost in a 15th century prayer book written in France. Mary watches the midwife washing the child. Joseph, dressed in outdoor robes, warms his hands in front of a fire where a pot of soup simmers. But this is one of the last nativity scenes to include midwives. In the 15th century, an Archbishop of Florence writes that the midwives are contrary to our faith. In the late 15th century, the witch hunts begin. The women most likely to be witches, the Church in Rome says, are single women, widows, and midwives. By the 16th century, the midwives had vanished from the nativity in the art of the West. They did, however, survive in nativity scenes in the art of the Eastern Orthodox Church.